This stack of books has been desperately waiting for me to film an unhaul so that I can get it out of my house, so let's do it. Hey, what's up? My name is Daniela and today we are doing an unhaul. I have 24 books here to unhaul, and considering that those books are all that is left, basically, it is a substantial amount. This unhaul pile has been growing for months now and I'm very excited to get it out of my apartment, so we're going to go through them and send them to a better home. Before we begin, I want to say that I actually loved most of these books. Not all of them, but most of them. So I'm simply getting rid of them because I like to keep my book collection very small. Also, I am planning to move and I kind of have a feeling that I might just start over and keep a very small selection of my favorites. So we're just getting rid of the majority of the books I own. And also, at least one of these books was a gift, and I just want to say that I always very much appreciate book gifts and I always read them, but I just don't keep the majority of the books I read. But without further disclaimers, let's jump right into it. So a few of these books I bought in March because in April I was participating in two readathons. I was participating in Magical Readathon and Disability Readathon, and the first book I'm unhauling actually counted for both of those readathons, and it is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a kind of contemporary slash sci-fi adult book. So we follow Zello, who is a black disabled writer. She's down on her luck. She has just been fired from her teaching job and her writing is not going well. But the next book she writes actually changes everything. It is a sci-fi book, and we also get snippets of the sci-fi book, and then her life and the sci-fi elements start to mesh a little bit, and it's kind of meta and cyclical, and it can be understood in different ways, I think, so it can mess with your brain a little bit. It's about disabilities, success as a writer, family dynamics, race, a lot of themes covered in this one, and I absolutely loved it. Loved the writing, loved the characters, and the plot definitely makes you think. So yeah, it was a hit for me, but I don't think I will be rereading it either anytime soon or ever. This is the stunning edition, also with the sprayed edges, so it is a little bit sad to let go of it, but I would like to send it to the next reader. Then we have a young adult contemporary book that is called Noteworthy by Riley Redgate, and this was published in 2017, and a few years back I heard CC from Problems of a Book Nerd rave about this book, and from that time it was kind of in the back of my mind that I might read it someday. And then I found it in a secondhand bookstore and I grabbed it, and I'm really glad I did because I also really love this one. So in this one we follow Jordan, and she is at a artistic boarding school. She is a singer, but she's not getting accepted into the choirs or the plays because her voice is considered to be too low for a girl, so she's not getting any good roles. So she decides to dress as a boy and go for audition in an all-male a cappella band, and she's successful. So she's accepted into this boy group and they still think that she's a boy. This has some discovering of your identity, stuff like that. I don't consider this to be a spoiler, but don't necessarily go into this book specifically looking for a trans rep. This is more about a girl who is trying to exist in a boy's world. And we get really interesting dynamics in the boy group. It actually reminded me of The Raven Cycle. It has a very different plot, you know, there are no fantastical elements in this one, but the trope of a girl in a all-boy group. Also, the boys are, most of them are, you know, from rich families, whereas Jordan's family struggles with money, so that's also a significant theme. I don't read that much young adult these days, and also sometimes the setting of a boarding school makes me feel claustrophobic a little bit, but I love this one, and the music element was great too, so I think that it's definitely worth picking this up, even though it's a bit of an older release, and even if you don't read a ton of young adult. Then for a very specific prompt of the Magical Readathon that asks you to find a book with train in the title, I picked up How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. So I think G specifically said that you can use like other forms of the word train, so like it wasn't cheating, you know. And this was my first contact with this kind of story, so I've never seen the movie, never read the books, and I also don't read a ton of middle grade. I don't read almost any middle grade, but when I started reading this, I was like, well, maybe this isn't for me. Like when I started reading the first few chapters, but then surprisingly, I really got into it and I ended up quite enjoying it. I'm not going to continue with the series, but I'm kind of glad I read this, and now I might watch the movie. I have heard that it is actually very different from the book. So this book is very fun. We have a kind of friend group that is competing, and a lot of the boys aren't nice, but there are also some nice friendships. And the highlight of the book were definitely the dragons, especially like the main dragon, or like the main character's dragon, who was this like mean little thing. And yeah, that was kind of precious. It is an older book and there are some flaws, like for example, there aren't any female characters to speak of, but I'm still really glad I read it, and we will send it to the next person. Then we have a DNF that I was quite bummed about, because for years I thought that I would love this book, but turns out maybe I wouldn't. And it's Dress Codes for Small Towns by Courtney Stevens. So this is a young adult contemporary that is one of the favorite books of Kayla from Books in Law. So I thought that I might love it because it's like, you know, I think it has queer rep and it's set in a small town. So I thought that I could relate because I grew up in a small town. But I started reading it and I just couldn't get into it at all. Like I didn't click with the writing style at all, which doesn't happen that often. Like sometimes I might be feeling ambivalent about the writing, but this time I just wasn't. Yeah, I had to DNF it right away because I just couldn't do it. Also, like the characters, I didn't warm up to them at all. I might, like, if I continued with the book, but I just lost all my interest after reading the first few chapters. So unfortunately, I won't be giving this a chance after all. Well, you know, another chance, which is a bit sad, but oh, it's fine. Then we have Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. So this is book 3 in the Brightfall series. This is an adult sapphic romance series. It is one of my favorite series. Well, at least the first two books are. The first two books were 5 stars for me. The first book is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. And it's not like I didn't enjoy this book. I still gave it 4 stars. But given how much I love the first two books, I expected a bit more. So we follow two main characters, Stevie and Iris. Stevie has anxiety and Iris is kind of fed up of everyone around her getting coupled and everyone saying that she should also find someone. But then they kind of start fake dating because of circumstances, and I just didn't love their romance as much. And I also think that if it wasn't part of the series that I love, and if we didn't already have the established setting and the established friend group that I really love, this might be actually 3 stars. And so I don't really want to reread it, so I can get rid of it. Although, like, I'm keeping the first 2 books in the series and I don't really love splitting the series, but yeah, I don't think I will be rereading this one, so it can go. Next, I'm getting rid of one of my favorite books, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So I have read this book twice now. The first time I listened to it on audio, so I don't think that I will necessarily be rereading it anytime soon. And if I want to, I can either listen to the audiobook or, you know, whatever, get it from the library or something. I just don't need to own it right now, even though I really enjoyed my reread. I recently read it physically in this form and I still love it. It is amazing. So in case you don't know, this is an adult romance between a fictional son of the first female American president and a British prince, and it is very fun. It is very steamy. It deals with politics a lot and I love it, but it can go for now. Then we have Hang the Moon by Alexandria Belflor. So I previously read the first book in this loose series, which is called Written in the Stars, and that was a sapphic romance, and I really enjoyed it, so I kind of automatically got to the next one, and I didn't even look at it properly. And I thought that the second book was also a sapphic romance, and it is not. This is a male-female romance. But nonetheless, I continue with the series. In this one, we follow Brandon and Annie. And Brandon and Annie knew each other when they were teenagers, and Brandon kind of had a crush on her. Then she moved away. Now she's back, and when she meets Brandon again, she's like, oh, okay, maybe. This was a perfectly fine, sweet romance. I gave it 4 stars, and the city of Seattle is kind of one of the main characters of this book, which I really liked because I like how the author kind of writes this as a love letter to Seattle, because sometimes the setting of a book is very generic and you can't even really tell what the city is, or you forget easily. So I like that element, but yeah, definitely don't need to be keeping it. Speaking of Alexandria Bellflower, I also read The Fiancé Farce, and surprise, surprise, I really loved it. This is a sapphic romance, and I gave it 5 stars. So in this one we follow Tansy and Jemma, and it is kind of fake dating. Well, actually a fake marriage proposal because for reasons that in this case actually make sense, they need to get married soon and they barely know each other, so it's set to be a lot of fun. I absolutely loved the main characters in this one and their romance. I thought that their dynamics was great from the very get-go, and there's a lot of drama, mostly family drama, that they have to deal with, and it was just such a good ride. And then the last romance I have is Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire by Sarah Hawley. This is book 3 in the Glimmerfall series, which again, one of my favorite adult romance series. This one is set in a witchy town, and we have different creatures living there, and it is always such a fun ride. It is hilarious, it is steamy, it is, yeah, it's just pure fun. So in this one we follow Eleanor, who is a vampire succubus, and she was cursed centuries ago, and now she meets Ben and they are trying to break the curse. This book, I might not be unhauling it because it is kind of one of my favorites, but I already unhauled the second book and I had the first one from the library, so at this time I am just not starting collections. Also, like, if I was like doing a collection of sapphic books, I would be keeping this one, but it's not that time. Maybe someday in the future, you know. Next we have a book that really surprised me, and that is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. So I previously had a negative experience with Sally Rooney's books because I DNF'd Normal People, but then again it was in 2020 while I was like DNFing books left and right at that time, so maybe if I read it again I would feel differently. But in any case, it kind of put me off of Sally Rooney. But then I was doing like a random swap and a girl said that she would bring a book, so I was like, okay, like I will see what it is, and if I don't feel like reading it I will just swap it to the next person. And she came with this one, and I decided, well, let's give it a try, and lo and behold, I ended up quite enjoying this one, which was a big surprise for me. In this we follow 2 friends who are kind of around 30, I think, and I think they're both depressed. I think everyone in this book is depressed, so everyone is kind of dealing with a lot of stuff, and part of this book is just the 2 friends writing each other letters, and then the rest of the book is written in this interesting style where we don't get any inner thoughts of the characters, so the author is simply describing what the characters are doing, and from that we can kind of guess what they're feeling. And I found that style quite interesting. The women get involved in kind of questionable relationships, well, at least one of them is questionable, but it was just a kind of a wild ride and it kind of fitted into my mood at that time. So maybe I will give more books by Sally Rooney a try, but this ended up being a bit of a hit. But also, like, if someone hates it, I completely understand because it is, yeah, you have to be in a certain kind of mood, I think. Then we have this little Czech book called Vlak do pekla, which means the Hellbound Train, and this is a collection of sci-fi stories, American and British ones. It also has Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, which I guess is the most famous short story of this collection. And I read this as a teenager several times. I always got it from my library, so it was a book that, you know, is still kind of stuck in my mind. And then last year I saw it at the secondhand bookstore, so I grabbed it and I reread it, and yeah, most of them are still quite interesting, and I definitely enjoyed my reread. I might be just unhauling this to my parents' house because it is a kind of a nostalgic read, so I think I will lend it to a friend and then I will see if I want to keep it. But yeah, this is out of print, like you can only get it secondhand these days, so I might just hold onto it for a bit at my parents' house and keep it as a nostalgic read. And then the last fiction book before we go into the non-fiction books is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. So this is a book I absolutely loved. This explores one of my favorite tropes or themes, which is trying on different lives. So you have that sci-fi element, but it's mostly contemporary. And we follow our main character Lauren, and one day she comes home from a party and there is her husband. The problem is that she is single, so like, who is this stranger? And then she finds out that her attic became magic, and every time the husband goes into an attic, another one climbs down. So she's kind of rotating husbands, trying to deal with the new situation, experimenting, trying to figure out what exactly she wants from the husband, etc. It leads to a lot of hilarious situations, but also some pretty serious ones, because at some point Lauren kind of, you know, loses it and is doing decisions that might not be the smartest. But yeah, it's an amazing ride. I absolutely love this book. So I just reread it. I have now read it twice and I can wholeheartedly recommend it, but I think that I'm kind of good for now and I might reread it sometime in the future, but for now I can get rid of this copy. Okay, so now let's go through the other books, non-fiction and random other categories. Well, this one is technically still fiction. It's Coco Aprende a Leer, which is a book that I specifically bought because I'm learning Spanish and I wanted a really simple book to read as my first Spanish book, so I bought this children's book and read it. I have one poetry book here, and that is The Perseverance by Raymond Entrebus. So I also read this for the Disability Readathon, and it says on the back, this is by a deaf author. I had a good experience with this poetry collection. I don't read that much poetry these days, but I'm really glad I picked this up. It was very interesting. The poetry style wasn't necessarily my favorite kind of poetry, but yes, I'm very glad I read it. Then I'm also getting rid of Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Peter Attia. So this is a book that I randomly got at a work event where we did like a book swap. So I grabbed this book because I was kind of on a spree of reading like health related books. This is a book on longevity written by a man, and I think that it sums it well. You know, I had a pretty good experience with this. I enjoyed it. I was just in the mood to read a bunch of books like this, but I can't say that I took much from it, and it is very thick, so I'm happy to be sending it to the next person. Also getting rid of Factfulness by Hans Rosling. So I found this book very interesting, and I think there are some concepts and biases that it is good to be aware of. I didn't necessarily love like the tone and kind of the gotcha framing, but other than that, I thought that it was a good book to read. The next book that is going out is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. So I previously read one other book by Bill Bryson, that was The Body, and I liked it. So then last year I was in a secondhand bookstore in Vienna. Well, it wasn't a secondhand bookstore, it was the Shakespeare bookstore, but they had a discounted section, and I just kind of couldn't find anything, so at the end I just grabbed this very used copy of this book, and I finally read it and it was fun. Next we have a pretty little book, and that is A Little Gay Natural History by John L. Davis. So I got this last year in the National History Museum in London. Then getting rid of a Bible, and it's this Bible, SQL All-in-One for Dummies by Ellen G. Taylor. I've owned this for many years. It's like what I currently do for a job. I did read part of it, but then the rest I kind of flipped through. I don't really need it because, to be honest, if I don't know something at work, I just Google it. Then we have the Autism and Neurodiversity Self-Advocacy Handbook by Barb Hook and Ian Purkis. So this book just talks about advocating for yourself and some tools and strategies to use in different situations. I can say that I necessarily took a lot from this book, but maybe it would be more useful for younger people. And then we have another Bible, and that is the Czech version of The Freelance Way by Robert Vlach. He's a Czech freelancer and he wrote this Bible about all kinds of different aspects of freelancing. I have first read this in 2017 and I have now reread it. I will probably take a few notes, but I don't think I need this huge break anymore. And as the last category of books, I have a couple of cookbooks here. So we have Make It Vegan by Madeleine Olivia. I have been following Madeleine on YouTube for so many years, and some of her recipes are in my weekly rotation. So she definitely has a big impact on my cooking. But this cookbook specifically, like, I tried a few of the meals. I don't know, I didn't necessarily find that many of them. And also the format didn't end up working for me because the font is quite small. And I just found that when it comes to cookbooks, I just need the format to be like super appealing to me and very practical. This one just didn't end up working for me, but I still love some of her recipes. Also, another super heavy one is this Czech cookbook, which is called Healthy Eating, and I also got this for free at work at that book swap, and I thought that I would make like several recipes from this, but then upon second look I was like, maybe not. But I did take like a few photos of the recipes and I might try some of them, but for the majority yeah, I can get rid of this absolute brick. And the last thing, actually, should have mentioned a bit earlier, but it is another one by Madeleine Olivia, and it is Versatile Vegan. So this came out as an ebook and I just bought it and printed it out. And yeah, this one is almost nostalgic because it's like quite a few years old at this point, but I didn't make that many recipes of this one, and yeah, I think it can also go. And then as the very last category, I will just very briefly go through all of the bookmarks I'm getting rid of, because I go through my books all of the time. I unhaul books very regularly, but when it comes to bookmarks, I realized that I actually haven't gone through them in years. So I was like, well, I have way too many of them and I don't use a lot of them. So just very quickly, let's go through them. So this one, very random one from a Czech secondhand bookstore. This one is from that Shakespeare and Company bookstore in Vienna, a little bit rumpled, and it's just a paper. Quite a few of Book Depository bookmarks. RIP Book Depository, we had a good run. Bookmarks from a Czech secondhand bookstore called Knihobot, which I use a lot. The store, not the bookmarks. This one is from Gelato place in Lisbon, which was very random to get a bookmark from, but yeah, very crumpled, and I need to go to Portugal again to rewrite my memories of that trip. Another from a Czech bookstore. Then this one, and this one is from Doodle Planet Studio on Etsy. I have a couple of them, but this one specifically is very rumpled and very used, so this one will go, but I'm keeping the rest. And lastly, we have this little magnetic bookmark of The Little Prince. And it's very cute in theory, but I just don't use it. Okay, so that is everything that I have to get rid of. How are we feeling? I'm feeling excited about getting all of these things out of my house, but also a bit overwhelmed about, you know, the logistics, but we will figure it out. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books, and let me know if you have recently done an unhaul or if you are planning to make an unhaul. I have a whole playlist of all of my unhauls, so you can definitely watch some more if you're still in the mood. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!